Jewish ancestry, and together they hosted gatherings of their friends, including me, which on innumerable occasions for tea with delicious accompaniment, along with lively chatting with no predetermined agenda. Excuse me, let me get some water. Rajita was in the process at that time of writing his first book, A Rule of Property for Bengal, the monograph that would establish him as a historian of great distinction and also as an intellectual of unusual imagination and vision. It got widely noticed and praised across the world and was printed a number of times. In the Princeton University Press edition of the book, I had the privilege of writing the introduction to that book. The book investigates the intellectual background of Lord Cornwallis's deadly permanent settlement imposed on Bengal in 1793, which did extraordinary harm to the economy. To explain why, and briefly, why this harm, mainly because, as an economist would see it, through removing nearly all incentives for improving the performance of agriculture, and also through freezing land ownership-based inequality, which became very large in Bengal. The Rule of Property was a work of quite profound originality, differing from standard works on British colonial policy in India, focusing as it did on the role of ideas as opposed to greed and self-interest, which had become the mainstay of critical history at the time. Ranjita was offering a different vision. The focus on the underlying rationale of permanent settlement and on the reasons and humane ideas that led to it is all the more striking because in the event, the permanent settlement produced by these humane ideas produced quite a disastrous result. Guha's focus, quite unusually for colonial history, was not on imperial exploitation and the dominance of British interests over the concerns of the subject. Rather, his focus was on various well-meaning thoughts that inspired alternative proposals for land settlement in Bengal and also led to their botched up applications, leading ultimately to Cornwallis's terrible Rule of Property for Bengal. The Rule of Property for Bengal is not, however, the work for which Ranjit Guha is now most famous. That distinction goes to the series of subaltern studies initiated and led by him, the first volume of which was published in 1982 with the paper value, I believe. Subaltern studies are much more ambitious than his first book, and they comprehensively disputed elitist interpretations of history. In those studies, Guha was deeply critical of the fact that the historiography of Indian nationalism had been, for a long time, dominated by elitism, by both colonial elitism and national elitism. Nationalist elitism, you could even say bourgeois nationalist elitism, which Ranjita did much to disestablish. This was a big move to liberate the writing of Indian history, and by implication history in general, from its debilitating concentration on elitist achievements. But I was enjoying my work and the interactions with my students in Jadavpur. I continued to have regular visits to College Street and of course the old coffee house. I had left presidency in 1953, well before 1956, when the misdeeds of Stalin's Soviet Union will be placed in bright light in the world, light in the world by Khrushchev in the 20th Party Congress. But even in the 1940s, I must say, I found it hard to believe that any discerning reader could think that the purges and the trials that the USSR had in the 1930s could be anything but organized implantation of alleged guilt. It was based on making people confess to be dealt with by the heaviest of punishment. I have been having read a lot of Bukharin earlier. It was interesting for me to see that this foremost Leninist of this period was seen as confessing that he had been trying to subvert the Soviet Union. And even when American visitors like John Gunther said so, I simply didn't believe it. These issues came up in discussions in the coffee house when I was a student at Presidency. And I sometimes found myself feeling rather deserted by most of my friends. Between the rightists who thought Marx got it all wrong, a hugely mistaken diagnosis, and true leftists, quote unquote, who thought there was no tyranny in Russia, only the operation of, quote, the democratic will of the people, a belief of unfathomable naivety, it appeared to me. We had a very difficult passage. I began thinking on the need for me to be less dependent on others, on getting agreement of others, pleasing as it would be. But that is not a good way of thinking about politics. And perhaps in our discussion time we can take up that question. Which, that is politics, must involve groups, but make room for individual thought and critical, possibly heretical reasoning. One reason why I was so impressed with Gundita, I was pretty well informed that the reading that he had done, namely on Marxian classics, was his ability to disagree. That combination of social existence and individual reasoning has always been important to me. And my experience of arguments in Calcutta in the 1950s, first at College Street near Presidency College, and then at Jadavpur, persistently brought out the need for that combination. As it happens, my first book, and if anyone would like to ask me, I believe in some ways perhaps the book I would mostly associate myself with, on social choice, collective choice and social welfare, published in 1970, began on page 1 with a statement from Karl Marx from the Economic and Philosophic Manuscript of 1844. I quote myself quoting Marx in that manuscript, 1844. What is to be avoided above all is the re-establishing of society as an abstraction vis-a-vis the individual, unquote. Not the society being important in any way other than being a constitutive feature of the individual and an individual being a constitutive part of society. That thought is important today, I believe, and we may have time to discuss, in resisting under-reasoned recharacterization of Bengali society in terms of narrow-minded